Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Flynn and I here to talk about um, success for each team. Talk about what we think that each team needs to do, whether that's win it all, whether that's get 101, whether it's win the extra pick bracket, whether it's make it to playoffs that would be able to say that this is successful for them. And again, joined by Flynn this morning. So, Flynn, we're doing a Saturday morning recording. This is the first time we've ever done this. But thank you for
Breaking
squeezing
new
in
ground.
time. Yeah, breaking new ground, and you're about to go to a wedding, so
Oh,
um,
yeah.
we'll squeeze this in. Um, so let's just kind of recap last week first, I guess. Push some buttons and talk about week two. So Liquidators stomp the implications. Ticket to Ride beats the C words. Dan Flashes falls by about 100 points to the Tigers. Justin's Deli beats Project Badass just barely, even though Project didn't start some players, which is thing. Flynn with 200 points over the inaugurals, and Kung Fu Pandas with 207 over Brownout. Kind of mean or funny, right? But I was like very quickly and excitedly checking to see what the record was, hoping you would break it. But no one said shit about the Pandas breaking 200 points, and nobody cared. I think it's just the league rooting for you in a sense after the last two seasons. But was that the most shocking game of the week for you, or was there anything else that really surprised you in terms of how these matchups played out?
That was definitely shocking for me, especially after week one where Marvin Harrison didn't do anything.
Yeah,
I was a little worried, and then he came out strong week two.
yeah. Were you worried, like as a fan or for fantasy or both? I mean, 32 points this week. Was it
Oh,
like
it
one
was
point
both
something
for sure.
last week?
Yeah, that was going to be that crushing to me if he's not a good player.
Yeah,
But
1.4 the week before. Yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, watching that happen, not live because I was on Red Zone, but watching it happen on Red Zone, it was just like, okay, yeah, this dude's legit. I think Cam even said something funny because people were questioning his speed in the league chat. He said, I don't know how fast he looked on his second touchdown of the day in the first quarter or something like that. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of funny that people will find this one random stat and just say that that's the gospel now. So, um,
yeah, well, classic week one overreactions.
yeah, very much so. Which was a fun episode to do last week. So looking at the standings, we've got the Tigers and the Deli both at 3-1 in the Jamarcus Russell division. Dan Flash is in at 1-3, and Project Badass at 0-4. I think Dan won with the median. If I'm not mistaken, I don't remember. Maybe he beat Project and lost the median. I can't remember. I should know. And the Ryan leaves the division of death 3-1, 3-1, 3-1, and then 2-2 for your
Yeah.
team. Kind of the thoughts of what you said last year. You thought the media would help your team, and it didn't. But this week it did. But you also kind of are a pace setter for the media, and that helps a lot too. Um, and then the complete opposite and the Achilles Smith division 3-1, 2-2, 1-3, 0-4 down the bottom for the implications. Nobody 4-0. In 1 week, we've already got everybody with a loss on
Yeah.
their record, which is surprising with how long we went. I think first year was a few weeks, and then last year was many weeks. But already everybody with a loss on their record. So let's just go team by team. All we'll do the website. I think will be a better thing to look at for this, and I guess we'll just go in alphabetical order. I usually do it in my weird order that nobody knows that order or why. But we'll go in alphabetical order and we'll alternate back and forth. So we'll start with Brownout. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
All right. Oh, you said you go first, or I go first? Shit, I missed it.
Yeah, I can go first.
Um,
So, yeah, go ahead.
no, you got it. I believe in you.
Um, so Brownout is he's just still got stacked roster. Um, Players are young and they're good. I think he's looking at a good chance for a repeat this year. He kind of keeps hitting on these players coming to the league. Braylon Allen's maybe the latest one. Um, he's you know he kind of cashed in on his draft stock in the future, but it's kind of a win now team.
Yeah. Um, Negative 164. I know, and I know we're not supposed to talk about what happens in, I guess, really, talk about what's happening now. But Does he have draft picks? No, he doesn't really have anything for this year. He still has. I mean, he doesn't have his third or fourth for 2026, which who cares? He doesn't have his fourth in 27. Who cares? But the way that his team is built is just there's everything good at every position. I think his team is one of the top ones that got better versus some of the other ones that were at the top that kind of stayed there. Um, so I wonder. I think anybody's happy making the playoffs, right? Like that's kind of what the goal is, to get to playoffs. I think if everybody says my goal is to win the league every year, you're a little silly. But do you feel like winning the playoffs or winning again is that success? Like if he doesn't make it to the championship, is that a failure of sorts? Do you think, since he's mortgaged a bit of the future, or what are your thoughts?
I'd say it's a small failure. Um, playoffs are so chaotic. I mean, last year you looked like the team to beat by a mile, and
Right.
it's just you had one bad week.
Yeah.
But the way he has bought up and he purchased Mahomes, I think he's in it to win it again this year. So
Yeah.
if he doesn't do that, I think there's going to be some disappointment.
Yeah. No, I agree. To your point, I think top three has got to be the goal or the expectation for them. I think if you don't get there, it's disappointing. Um, Negative 164 next year, so he's going to have to figure some of that out. Part of me almost feels like if you ever are negative, unless it's like $10 or something in a future year, if you're ever like 50, 60, 70, 100 negative in the next year, you're saying, hey, I don't care. This is all I've got like this year. So I do kind of think that finishing getting some money is kind of the place that Brownout needs to be in the top three. So
Yeah, and he could solve those cap problems really easily by doing something with Deshaun and Mahomes.
yeah, easily. I tried to do something with him for Deshaun, or I was just gonna get him and cut him, but he has not budged. But I've been asking a lot, so if I'm gonna put Deshaun Watson on my roster for more than 5 seconds, it's gonna be a big price to pay. So we'll move to Dan Flashes in the Jamarcus Russell division. I still haven't fixed this typo. I'm making it. So if I don't write stuff down, it's gone out of my brain. So defining success for Dan is such an interesting one. I think his team is like the most fun one to talk about, almost, in terms of what he needs to do or should do or shouldn't do, because it seems like Dan doesn't want to stop ever, which I love and I appreciate. There's everybody's got the league with like the perpetual rebuilders, and I love that Dan doesn't, and that he's always all in. But he's got to figure something out, because he's low on money this year and next year with minimal players in the roster. But he does have enough hitters. I mean, we saw that Rodgers can still kind of do it. So yesterday, this is still week 2. The Rodgers in the game the other day, 25 points. So like that's pretty solid there. JT is getting all the usage up there. Cup was getting all the usage. So I mean, he's paying the right people, I would argue. It's just scary after that. So for me, I think that playoffs, winning the division / playoffs, would be success for Dan. I don't know how long lived that would be because of his situation next year, but he could easily kind of do a mini 1 year rebuild and then turn it around with the space that he has in 26. I think he has most of his 25 picks. He's got his first. He's got his entire 26 draft class, so he's okay there. So part of me thinks make noise in the playoffs or get to the playoffs. It's been a different team the last 2 years that have won the division. I think that Dan's got to do that this year. If he doesn't, then it gets a little scary. Then it's you've got to win the extra pick bracket. I think that whatever bracket he gets into, he needs to make some noise there, and I think that would be success for Dan. What do you think?
Yeah, he's really going to need Jordan Love to come back from that injury and come back strong. He has no depth behind him at quarterback. He's starting Alex Matheson in his Superflex right now.
Yeah, a little
Cooper
spooky.
Cup is, I don't know if you can trust him at this point. He's so good when he's not hurt. He's hurt so often, and he doesn't have the depth behind him.
Right.
So hopefully he comes back strong too.
Yeah, I mean, there's a 50-50 for Jordan Love to play this week too, which is interesting. So that's a huge boost if he can get him in there. Osborne putting up a dud doesn't do anything, but you still got to figure out Keenan Allen. Amari Cooper, I know that he's projected 13.31 points. He's got two Browns receivers, but neither of them have done much in that offense recently. So yeah, I just
Oh, and he's got Keenan Allen out this week too.
yeah, the Keenan Allen crushes. I have somebody shares a Keenan Allen because he's one of those old guys that nobody wants anymore. But I scoop up as much as I can. Yeah, so he's starting 1-3. I think the goal has got to be he'll win the bracket he gets in and aim for playoffs. But we will see how the season goes. Let's talk about his division rival, Justin's Deli. As Allen is also making a push to win that division, and kind of be the first repeat guy back-to-back years for them. What do you think success is for Allen?
Definitely winning that division, trying to make a name for himself in the playoffs. He has got a very narrow road to do it, though. He has almost no bench.
Yeah.
So no depth behind, his admittedly very good starting roster. So he could do it, but a lot of things have to go right for him to do it.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. You look at the lineup he has right now. It looks great. I mean, this would look a lot better with Ken Walker here, right? But like, you take McLaughlin out and you put Ken Walker there instead, and it looks great. It's a team that can hang with anybody. You worry a little bit about Shakir just because the Bills and their offense, it's a mess with their receivers. He's got Fields though, so that's kind of nice. But then there's nothing. I mean, there's nothing. Like, nothing else here. It makes you wonder if Allen will plan to move one of these at all to try to make something happen. I mean, we saw him move his second round pick with Mixon. Like, it was Mixon and his second for free to codes to just try to get rid of that cap space so he's not adverse to moving picks. But you wonder if he tries to push all in this year. But, it's a three-headed race, right? Because Project is kind of not there. But even the points for Dan don't really reflect where you would think they would be, I guess, with the injuries he's dealing with. But yeah, I agree with you. It's going to get really, really scary during the bye weeks. I think it's worth, like, I have a few teams that are not looking good right now that have started like 0-2 or something similar, and my immediate thing is to panic. But I'm like, you know what? I have depth at the positions I need to that nobody else does, and I shouldn't be freaking out at 0-2 because once we get halfway through the bye weeks, that's when hopefully people will start to panic and either try to get out or be more receptive to trading and moving pieces and that. Allen's still got money in the bank for next year as well, $374 in the bank. So he's not going to be one of these teams that's one and done because he's got some good draft picks. Drafted Worthy, drafted Bijan, drafted Stroud, Penix, Walker. Some really, really good pieces there.
Yeah, he's got his own first next year as well. So he's got some stuff to work with.
Yeah, very flexible. He could go either way. All right, the Pandas, one of your lovely division rivals. It's so interesting. So whenever I've talked to other people about the Pandas, everybody keeps saying that they're on the verge of collapse or they're teetering on the edge of collapse. But I still don't see that. I think that this might be like the last big year for them before they ride off into the sunset type deal. But I don't see the imminent collapse. I mean, next year's going to be scary because they're losing a couple of their like core pieces, right? Like Lamar Jackson, Alvin Kamara, Josh Jacobs are all gone. Shaheed's on the last year of his deal. He just traded for Stafford, who's in the last year of his deal, and it's going to be expensive to re-sign. And then you've got some other players that are a bit more expensive. I mean, Tyreek 75, DK Metcalf 120. So I think there's some questions as to what Unicorn should do next year. But looking at it from this year, I think everything is fine. I don't want to say. I feel like it's unfair to say for any of the teams that winning the division is success because it's such a shit show in your division. Um, but I think that success is having playoff success because that's the one thing that we haven't seen Unicorn do. Already leading the league in points for. Um, that's the only thing we've really ever seen Unicorn not do. Well, no, I think lifetime stats, like wrong thing. Um, playoff, they're 2-2 in the playoffs after having the best statistical win percentage in the league. I think the best points for in the league between them and Brownout. Yeah, so second best points for in the league, best win percentage in the league, most divisional wins in the league, highest division win percentage, but hasn't done it in the playoffs yet. After making it in both times, and so I think that success for Unicorn has got to be to have better playoff success and end top three, make it to the finals, or something along those lines would be my first thought.
I'd have to go look it up again, but I think he did make it to the ship year one. Year one.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he lost to Cam Hun in the finals of year one,
Okay.
and then in year two, um, beat me in the third place game. So Unicorn's making money. Like Unicorn is successful. He's making money. So we talk about the lack of playoff success. Maybe that's an unfair label because he has placed second and third. But what is the Jerry Seinfeld joke who said, second place sucks. He's like, out of all the losers, you were the best one, but you're still a loser,
Yeah.
basically. And so I know that's not the same, but do you fan the Flames at all? To maybe Unicorn should think about flipping the switch and trying to. I can't even say it but like like this right here, like these four right here are really attractive. Even Shahid maybe, or like really attractive trade pieces on 1 year expiring deals. Part of me feels like Unicorn could go ahead and say, okay, well, I'll give you Lamar, I'll pay for it if you give me two firsts. But like, I don't think that would even make sense, despite the other two or three people I've talked to offhandedly saying, I don't know how much longer he's going to be around.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think that kind of is an overreaction. He has been buying a lot
Yeah,
this season and off season. He's stacking up this roster. Almost every one of his players has really high upside. Um, any of these guys on the bench could be impact contributors down the line.
yeah,
And I think he's really just trying to stack up this roster and really make a run for it this year. And then, probably do a rebuild or a soft rebuild starting next year.
yeah. Still Chubb 2 on IR, ready to come back. Still has the first and
Yeah.
third. So very flexible. All the 26 picks, if I'm not mistaken. No, he lost his second in 26, but all the main pick, got his first there and leading the league in points for. So no reason to panic just
Yeah,
yet.
only 8 guys under contract going into next year, though.
Yeah. Kincaid, Eric Gray, DK Metcalf, Chris Olave, Nick Chubb, Dak Prescott, Tyreek Hill, and Zamir White. But lots of decisions to make in terms of what are you going to do with Wilson? What are you going to do with Kittle, Lamar, Kamara, Jacobs, Shaheed? Um, Not so much towards the bottom here, but Stafford's the other one too, because Stafford's going to be, I think next year Stafford turns 58, and then his re-sign is going to be like $100 some. So Unicorn definitely pushing the chips to the I'm still winning, I'm still aiming to win perspective. So all right, cool. We can speed through these next two. We got Project and the implications up. So let's Project Badass. We'll go first. What do you think success is for them?
I think he needs to focus on rebuilding. He's still got a lot of roster to churn over.
Yeah,
One of his big acquisitions was Tua, and that could have been a total disaster for him.
yeah,
We'll see if Tua can come back from that. If I were him, I'd be moving these running backs, trying to get some draft capital for the future.
yeah,
But he could very well you trying to win, the toilet bowl. So last year I flew a little too close to the sun with uploading players. I ended up in last place. So there is some value to keeping these players around. So I would
Yeah.
say for him competing for that toilet bowl championship.
It also is tricky to your point, the Tua injury, where he's not there right now. T. Higgins hasn't played anything just yet. So he went so in on the Denver offense, I think unintentionally, but just went so in on the Denver offense it hasn't worked. Rome Odunze has not looked good, but I don't blame him for that. I think the Bears have like three yards per play average, which is the worst in the league. It's worse than the Panthers. It's just looked terrible. Um, so maybe they get it together. I like that he's built some of these contracts like for consistency in the future. I like the Ingram contract. I like Deontay's contract. Um, but there are some big numbers in this next year that are a little scary for players that maybe shouldn't carry those numbers. So there's some figuring out to do. But we'll see what Tua does. Has good cap situation for next year, 249 with some pieces. I think has all the picks for next year. I don't think he's lost anything in 26. Yeah, he's got lost his fourth, but nothing there in 26.
Got an extra. Oh no, he doesn't have an extra first. He just has one first next year.
Yeah, this year he's got his first and that's it, and he was happy enough with that, and I don't blame him. I think success for them is second place in the toilet bowl. I think I'm going to say the same. I'll just kind of continue this into the implications as well. But I think aiming for second place in the toilet bowl and getting 102 has got to be what they've got to do. I think that implications and Project Badass are both very clearly 3 and 4. But I think when you look at some of these points for, right, you look at Dan with only 178 points for, Rick with 219. We're 2 weeks in, so it's not real. But I think that those two teams really need to think about, is there any way that I can beat one team and then beat the implications? Or after the implications, can you beat one team and then beat Project where you can have a chance to get 102? Because the difference between 102 and 104 is pretty drastic.
Yeah.
But I think that that's the only thing that either of these teams can hope for. Otherwise, whenever they play each other in the toilet bowl, you're basically saying this determines who's 103 and this determines who's 104, the same way that the other two teams who are mystery teams will have to say who's 101 and who's 102. And we still don't know who those other two teams are. Early on, it looks like maybe Dan and Rick, but I don't expect Dan or Rick to go there unless they choose to. I don't expect Dan there. I think Dan will make moves. I don't think Rick would hate it because I think Rick would walk in saying, "Yeah, I'm here for the 101. Thanks." But we'll see. I mean, even Chase hasn't done too well in the points for category, but his max points for are different. So I don't know. So it's a mess. So anyway, implications in Project Badass, in my opinion, success for them is 102. Reality is 103. Could be 104 for both.
Yeah. I mean, it's not bad. You in particular had to turn that roster over, and you did a pretty damn good job. I mean, I just looked. You have 4 firsts going into next year.
Yep, 4 of them.
And jumpstart that rebuild.
Yeah, also negative $700 in cap this year, I think, or next year. It's like negative $600 in cap next year because Cam and I were talking Stafford, and he wanted me to pay for something next year. I was like, I'm negative $100 already. Like if I take all these picks, so.
That's right. If you're including the picks.
Yeah, because they have the price increases next year too. So.
Yeah.
But I told Cam, I was like, yeah, I have negative $690 next year in the cap room already, and he was like, "What the fuck did you do?" I was like, "I don't know. I'm rebuilding." So. Yeah. Speaking of Cam, let's swing over to the inaugurals as they look for another push. That big Stafford trade coming through yesterday. What was your immediate reaction to that trade? Because that was an interesting one. I think I was explaining it to people, and they were very much side of the Kincaid and the first side. But then when you look at the contract implications to it, you kind of understand that Cam had to take a hit to try to get out of debt a little bit. Did you have any immediate reactions to it?
Yeah, it's definitely a future forward looking move.
Yeah.
I think he was really high on Kincaid. That was what surprised me the most. But getting McBride back really cancels that out.
Yeah.
Getting up the first is never an exciting thing to do. But it was a move he probably needed to make long term.
Yeah. And Unicorn getting his first back too, which is it kind of lets Unicorn not control his destiny more, right? But it allows Unicorn to say, okay, I'm definitely pushing in, so I'm going to move the first, or maybe I do figure something out silly, so I hold the first. If the chips don't fall that way, so. But yeah, very much a cat move for Cam. Um, even on future years, but when you look at his roster,
time,
go ahead.
Stafford just lost two of his best receivers. I mean, two great receivers.
Yeah.
So he's probably not going to be helping him win at this point.
Yeah. Maybe Cam's just happy. He's got Kyler and Geno. And I feel like Geno is perpetually underrated. I'm not saying I want him as my QB1, but maybe Cam's just valuing the money and the fact that he can just roll with Geno for a bit. But there is no QB3 on that roster currently, which isn't necessarily necessary. But it is Cam, I think, the top 2 heaviest trader addict in the league. Is I think Cam and I. Yeah, fucking. Every time I have to mentally prepare myself now. Every time Cam's like, "Hey, I'm cooking on something," I have to be like, "All right, get in a fucking." He's gonna fleece you somehow. He's gonna do it. So I have to get into that mode whenever he and I start talking. But he's definitely one that could go make something happen somewhere else for sure later on. But his roster now still in a really nice place. I mean, Geno and Kyler, not the sexiest two at quarterback. I'm a big Kyler guy. I think you are as well, just from being a Cardinals fan.
Yeah.
Unicorn's fine. He's got so much faith in Ramondre, but the meat and potatoes of his thing is Jefferson, Chase. He's a Tank Dell guy. He loves his receivers. Got Hopkins on the bench, Jacoby Myers on the bench, Jahan Dotson, Josh Downs on the bench. Got pieces kind of everywhere. Not as much depth as maybe we're used to with some of these teams, but his star-studded lineup truly is a star-studded lineup.
Yeah, I mean, you have the 2 best receivers in the league, or 2 of the top 3 or 4, at least. Right. You got a good roster, at least a competitive roster.
Yeah. And Trey McBride, who everybody had as tight end 3 coming into the season. By everybody, I mean consensus, not everybody. Gibbs all the way down there hiding in the last flex spot with Rachaad White. So plenty of pieces for them. I think they're the weakest of the 3 personally. I think the points for reflects that as well. They've also got a little screwed in points against so far. But for me, I think success for them has got to be playoffs. I mean, it's tough to not say the place like top 3 again, but I would think at least making it to semifinals. But the thing is like Cam has said, this is it. Like negative $250, and we saw what it took for me to get out of there. Not that Cam is as dumb as I am. Cam's obviously very smart. Hopefully, he doesn't listen to this. But he could easily just give somebody Kyler or give somebody Jamar or give somebody Jefferson to be out of cap trouble. But when you're negative this much money, you're saying this is my year, and I don't know that his team. I think I said at the Code Informer episode, my super team last year I think beats his super team this year, because his super team this year isn't so much a super team, but he's got some solid pieces. But what do you think?
Well, in terms of that, I'd take your super team from last year. Especially at the quarterback level, it doesn't compare. But he does have some more hard decisions to make. I think he probably makes them in the offseason more.
Yeah.
But we'll see how it keeps going with this team. Losing Pacheco is a big blow to him.
Yeah, huge blow.
So I think he's very competitive going forward still, and I would still bet on him making the playoffs.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's as you said multiple times, that's a problem for future me. So,
Yeah.
speaking of a team built with a problem for future me, let's talk about the Liquidators a bit here. They've got that good young core. I love how Chase came in and set the meta on the 3-year contracts for everybody except for you, who signed him to 5 years because you're like, yeah, he's not going anywhere. But lots of youth on this team. Neighbors, May, Brooks, McConkey, Pearsall, Benson, Wright were all drafted there. So is Lloyd, so is Leggett, so is Burton, Vidal. Traded for London. And then you've got the hitters that come through over the top of that with Burrow, McCaffrey, Pittman, Rasheed Rice, and Laporta, who are cheap at hiding in the middle of the roster. But where it gets scary is that there's not as much cap room next year, 115. When you take into account the draft picks that Chase has next year, I think he's negative. And he's paying, in particular, Burrow and McCaffrey lots of money next year, a little over $600 combined with just those two. But he has all these other depth pieces here on these cheap rookie deals. I mean, he's building his team really well, but where do you think he needs to end? Because he and Rick have taken 2 different routes to the rebuild. Chase pushed the chips in much sooner with that Burrow McCaffrey trade that he and I made, whereas Rick's kind of doing it the slow, steady, not having to worry about things, I think, in the future so much. But where do you have Chase? Because I think it's kind of not a unanimous feeling, but everybody knows it's going to be the winner from the Jamarcus Russell, winner from Achilles Smith, the 3 from the Division of Death. But that 6 seed's always up for grabs, and Chase's name has come up a lot. Are you a believer in they sneak into that 6 spot or win their division, or what do you think?
I think he's definitely set up for it. What I like about McCaffrey and Burrow is if it's not happening for him, he could flip those guys too.
Right.
Obviously, McCaffrey has to come back from injury strong, and Burrow needs to pick it up a little bit. But they're bargaining positions for him.
Yeah.
And so he could kind of go either way at the trade deadline, depending where his team's at.
Right. Yeah, he does have that flexibility. Is he? I think he still has extra picks. Yeah, so he has his first this year.
The entire second round.
Plenty of seconds, couple thirds, couple fourths. You can flip these couple fourths to mortgage for his entire team, I think.
Yeah.
So he still has plenty of flexibility. And that's what I meant by he's negative next year if he makes all of his picks. So he still is in this sweet spot of kind of deciding what he wants to do, which is why his team is probably the hardest one to define on what success is, because you could easily say, hey, you're still rebuilding, win the toilet bowl. You could easily say, hey, you're pushing for that 6th playoff spot. You could also say, get in the middle and win the extra pick and get yourself another first-round pick.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a wrong answer on what success is for Chase. It's just he kind of has to see how things go, and then he can pick his own path. Almost like those Goosebumps books. Or Goosebumps back in like 2001, where you could like and open the door, go through the window, and it's like turn to this page. Like Chase is very much, yeah. Chase is very much in control of which direction he wants to go, and I think he's conscious of that. Right, the contract he signed Purdy to, he front loaded it to have some more flexibility for next year. The downside of all the 3-year deals for the rookies is that you're going to have more contract decisions to make in 26 versus if you let them go out to longer years. But the nice thing is that if these guys aren't hitting, you're not stuck with a $70 cap hit in 2028 where you can just let them walk out the door. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of the path that Chase takes. So maybe it's a cop out,
I think,
but he gets to pick his own version of success.
Burrow and or McCaffrey probably are not on the roster next year.
Yeah.
I think he goes in on those draft picks further.
Yeah, I agree. There's going to be a team, I think that Chase could easily send one of them to for a first. Maybe Chase sends like a late second and McCaffrey for a mid first or something, to a team that just kind of needs another piece there.
Though.
Yeah.
A lot of it.
But even then, right, you cut him next year at 50%, right? So if Chase is willing to take half that 50% or something, it's still a win. But we've seen Chase dominate the draft and trade and move around the draft with everything he was doing this last year. So would not be shocked if he did that again. So down to the C words, we already kind of talked about them super briefly. So we'll kind of try to speed it up slightly for the sake of time as well. But Rick's another one where success has got to come from either winning the extra pick bracket. I think Rick is gonna just in a loving way, by the way, be on autopilot and let the season take him where he goes. I don't really see Rick going out and exploring to trade for or away somebody. I think if people come to Rick, that he'll always be happy to talk about this or that. Maybe trade deadline he makes a move, but Rick can kind of sit and coast and say, okay, my team hasn't been doing well, so 101 is my focus. Hey, my team is doing better than expected. The extra pick bracket is my focus. I would almost think that success for him would be the extra pick bracket, just because if he gets there, it means that Caleb Williams and Anthony Richardson have had a good year or started to turn it on since they're his quarterbacks. But if his team is successful, his rookie quarterbacks are also probably being successful, so things are kind of going on this upslope for him. But if they're not successful, then he's kind of in the bottom tier, and I can't imagine this lineup losing many games in the toilet bowl when you've got, Pitts, Kelsey, Lockett, Evans, Cook, Henry, Richardson, Williams. I don't think they lose more than one game in the toilet bowl if they lose one at all, but that's my thoughts on Rick. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. He has a lot of players that kind of built to be competitive.
Right.
So he can definitely make some noise in that toilet bowl. I'd be shooting for extra pick bracket if I were him.
Yeah. The two first
would
be
nice.
Near
the amount of draft capital that like Chase has, but he's still got good draft capital.
Yeah, I think he's just got the one first, right? He's got your second.
2 seconds.
Yeah, so the first 2 seconds, a third, and a fourth. So slow and steady for Rick, but I think he doesn't. He's probably the least pressured team. I mean, if you don't count Project and I, who have just said, "Hey, it's over," I think he's got the least pressure on him in terms of what he needs to do or what he should do or what he should be expecting. Because if his team is successful, his younger guys are being successful, and he can be happy with that at the exact same time. So, moving on a Ticket to Ride, saving the 3 most interesting ones for last, I think. Code's team is just built so interesting. Nobody expected him to come in second last year. Nobody expected him to, in my opinion. He dropped a bunch of points, not in week 2, it was week 1. He dropped 196, setting the start to the league, the record for this year with 196. And his team is just built so distinctly. Like, this has got Code's hands all over it. What do we think success is? I think you're supposed to start this one. I don't remember. I'm not good at keeping track.
Success for him is making another deep playoff run. He's got a good squad to do it. He's got really good front end talent. He's got some solid depth. The other thing about him is he's in a really good cap situation going forward. He doesn't have any draft capital next year.
Right.
So I would imagine that he wants to finish pretty high up, and that's how, we'd measure success for him.
Yeah. He's looking okay in 26 with the draft capital. Got that extra second for Joe Mixon. But the thing that you look at is I think he's on a bit of a window as well, with his choices of restructuring Diggs and Allen. I mean, Allen's got some late cap hits in 27 and 28. I mean, I made the joke once already about the problem for a future me. I mean, Codes really definitely has the problem for a very far in the future me, because he's kind of put himself in a situation where he's saying 27 and 28 are my rebuilding years, depending on how my picks go. If you hit on an insane running back or quarterback, like a Marvin Harrison potentially, or a Nico Collins, or a Stroud, then maybe you don't have to rebuild as much. But you push it off that far, you're basically saying, hey, these next couple of years I'm going for it. He's got Allen for the 3 years. He's got Hurts for the 3 years. Devonta Smith for the 3 years. Like, his core is after 26. I don't know anymore. And so I agree. I think a playoff run has to be the expectation for him. But I like that it's not a total failure of a season if it doesn't happen this year the way that it's built out. I think he was really smart with the way that he did these contracts with Allen and Hurts, where Allen's paid a little bit more this year, next year. This way, when Hurts hits 302 and 26, Allen's all the way back down to 164. and he managed to make that Allen contract livable, even if it is mortgaging the future a bit. And he's got a lot of different pieces. He's going to have some big decisions to make with Diggs off the roster, Singletary, Mixon, Brown. But I think that he's in a position where if things don't go well this year, quote unquote, and he doesn't win, he can still restructure Hurts. He's still in a really good window, especially with how the rest of the divisions looked, to say the least.
Yeah, and he's still got two premier quarterbacks. And
yeah.
Superflex, it's easy to stay competitive.
Yeah,
very with much that kind of roster.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see just how much he pushes in. Like if he does decide to restructure Hurts and just throw another $200 in dead cap in 2026 or 2027 or 2028. That would be insane to not have anybody on your roster in 2028, but already be less than half your cap room or something. But if that's how it works and that gets you a championship, then who cares? If nobody would be making fun of how poorly my rebuild went if I won, but since I didn't, everybody's going to talk shit, and that's very understood and accepted. But if Code can pull it off, then it doesn't matter what happens. So moving on to the Webster Tigers, another team that's built very distinctly, I would say. Fun. See, I get to notice all the things I do wrong whenever we do this. So the Webster Tigers, probably the most distinctly built team with how many people are on these long deals, even poaching. So taking the running back from the Broncos, just accepting that it's going to cost that much money. But Morgan's building the team the way that he wants to, and has the pieces. He's got McDaniels and McCarthy, Addison, Charbonnet, Quentin Johnson, Blake Corum. He's got lots of pieces for a long time. Signed Trevor Lawrence. This last year's incorrect. I got to fix this one. I know you're running out of time, aren't you?
No, guys. I'll let the dogs out of the room.
Oh, poor puppies. I got to fix this too. So Trevor Lawrence is with a descending contract there. Nico Collins with a descending contract. So he's pushing the cap hits towards the front where he's good in cap, saving room for later. 22 players on the roster and $334 next year. I would guess that if you look at everybody, cap breakdown. I would guess if you look at everybody, he's got one of the most next year in terms of money for. This is obviously with the picks. So he's top 4 in terms of how much money he has next year, and he has the most players on the roster next year. The question just becomes on, do you believe in kind of all these different depth pieces, or would you rather have the kind of the opposite, the Allen, the where you've got the stars and studs, but you can compare those two together. But when you look at how the division's going, they're neck and neck with more points for Morgan currently. So in terms of success, I think it's got to be playoffs. I think at this point, the way that he's built his team, he's had the 2 years to turn around from the auto draft, made lots of trades, is building it his way. I think playoffs has got to be the goal for Morgan. It might not necessarily be make it to the finals or anything, but I think win the division, get in the playoffs, and do your thing should be what defines success for him.
No, I totally agree. He's in a very winnable division. And he has a ton of depth just from his kind of strategy of just stockpiling draft picks. And he hit on a good bit of them.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's kind of finally starting to pay off him. He is going to run into a problem eventually. He has all these draft picks, and he's not even going to have roster space for them.
Yeah. I mean, he's shown he's not afraid to cut people. I mean, that's what's interesting is Hall, Hainer, Bennett, Washington, Tucker. Like, he's happy to cut these guys, and they're only costing $2 or $3 for those shots, and he values that.
Yeah.
I mean, it worked for Puka. Got Spears there. It worked for Tucker Kraft, Dontavian Wicks. So, I mean, when it's working, it's working. But when it's not, it's work. It's funny. Like, I think you look at this chunk in the middle of the roster: Grendo, Johnson, Rice, Laub, Washington, Wilson. Even the poach attempt on Demi or ECM, whatever it is, Perry. Um, this is where it gets scary, but you can cut those dudes, and it costs you $2 a year to maybe find a Puka, to maybe find a guy that can plug into your flex, to maybe find you that edge. So far, it seems like it's worked for Morgan. Now that we're kind of seeing it all come to fruition, so the last team, best for last. Let's talk about Win Like Flynn. Do you want to go first on what success is for your team, or should I tell you what I think it is, then you confirm or deny it?
You tell me.
Blow it up. No, I'm just kidding. It's tough because after last week, like I want to root for more, but I think it's 101, and the only reason I think that is because the division that you're in, you've got to go back through and play them all again. The fact that there's no other clear bottom two, we keep coming back and talking about Dan, but I don't know. Got so many points for you. I don't know. I think success is your young guys continue to play well. You get clarity on what your quarterback situation is, and that you either win the 101 or you win the extra pick bracket. I think if you're in the extra pick bracket, I think that you would win it. It's just your quarterbacks scare me. Obviously, Young not there anymore. Jones probably not there anymore soon. Levis keeps doing some silly things. Darnold's been looking great, even though he's the 5th worst contract in the league. Carr looks incredible, dare I say, but I won't be tricked by him again. But yeah, I think success is winning whatever bracket you're in, whether that's the extra pick or the toilet bowl. And I think that's a bit if you get to pick. You get to kind of pick you're out there. Yeah.
I mean, that is toilet bowl was kind of what I was aiming for. But I think in this league, you either want to be first place, extra pick bracket winner, or toilet bowl winner. Everything else kind of sucks.
Yeah.
And
very much so.
The last two kind of suck the least. Obviously the winner's happy.
Yeah. But it really comes down to just winning that division.
I bet on Bryce Young kind of improving, and he definitely did not.
Nope.
And Will Levis is just chaos embodied, which is very fun to watch sometimes. But it's hard to trust on your roster.
Yeah, no, that's definitely hard to put in your quarterback spot or super flex spot. Great to watch on Sunday. But yeah, his coach was yelling at him on the sideline. I don't know if you can read this. He's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" After he threw the ball. Yeah, Levis just seems to do some interesting, silly things sometimes. But you've got enough pieces. Do you think that you're going to end up trying to be a buyer or seller at the trade deadline, depending on how things go? Because you've got a lot of pieces down here. Those 1-year contracts, I feel like, are the money ones to buy or sell. You've got Darnold, Godwin, Fant, Carr, Swift, Eckler. Kareem Hunt just obviously getting signed to the Chiefs. We'll be interested to see if he comes out in there and takes over. But do you have any plans for big picture for yourself, or not so much?
I have to wait it out and see how things kind of progress. Last year, I really made a mistake of selling on too much, and I think that's why I ended up in last place.
Yeah,
I think I would have been much more competitive in that toilet bowl bracket if I had held on to a few of those pieces.
We still haven't figured out what the plan is for that this year, I don't think, which is nice, but also scary because I'm pretty sure it's me, but we'll see. Be Project Dry. All right, final thoughts. Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap this thing up and end the conversation?
Yeah, when are we redrafting divisions?
After this year. After this year.
Okay.
After this year. The top 3 statistically will go into their own separate divisions, and then the bottom 3 statistically go into their own separate divisions. Draft of the top teams pick their people kind of in a snake draft. So the top 4 are more than likely going to be the top 4 currently are K-Migs, Unicorn, Cam, and Code. based off of their wins and losses. This has not been updated at all for this season, by the way, and this is not taking into account median wins and losses. This is just did they win or did they lose. So I would expect it to be 3 of them are doing it. The bottom 3 teams, I think I'm going to end up down there. I had the good year last year, but a miserable year 1. I'm going to have a miserable year 2. So I think it's probably going to be me, Project, and then I don't know the third. It could be Rick. It could be you, depending on how the season goes for either of you guys. Will be the bottom 3, and they get randomly assigned out. And then the other 6 teams are just in the middle. And then it'll start with whoever had the best record will pick their spot in the snake draft order, and then the other team will pick their spot, and then they'll just 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, and those will be on your divisions. The division, whoever has the best record in the division gets to name the division whatever they want as well. Unicorn, this is where you say, I think he's going to name it. Or he jokingly said he wants to name it something along the lines of Blind Spiral lost and didn't like came in 4th or something like that. Something to remind me of it. But you can pick whatever you want as long as it's, not ridiculous, right? I don't want to be like, we love something that, shouldn't love, like Nazis or something like that, obviously, right? But like, but yeah, I think that adds a little bit of fun. But yeah, it's going to be a completely new thing after this season. It'll be interesting to see kind of what that draft looks like, and then you've got to take into account like who's building up, right? So like, do you want to? So like, Project's nice teams suck right now, but do you want to take a bet on somebody else who's going to trend downward or what? And the other thing too is like the guy who wins the division or is the top of the division also might plan to tear it down, so there could just be a division of suck instead of a division of death. But who knows? That is a conversation for future us. But all I know is that you and I don't have a say at all in how it's going to be made, because we're both going to have 2 bad seasons and 1 okay one, the way it looks like your team is trending. So
yeah, let's hope.
Yeah. All right. Well, that does it for us. Thanks. Have fun at your wedding, Flynn. I said this is going to take 20. I said this is going to take 20 minutes, and here we are at the 52.5-minute mark. But it's always good talking to you.
You too, man.
All right. We will talk to you soon. Have a good one, everybody. Hope the week is healthy and good and fun for everybody.